All right, it's close enough. It's too quiet in here. So good evening and welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. However, this is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go on to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then who signed up on the sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you're attending through your telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Crystal. Good evening, everybody. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances and appeals, and recommendations to city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given either written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. That's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there is no public opposition, the item is placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, and neighborhood association presentations, and then followed by public testimony. Thank you for attending tonight. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer.
Here.
Danley. Gillespie.
Here.
Moore. Here. Mooney.
Here.
Seha.
Here.
Torres.
Here.
Stone.
Here.
7 present, 1 absent.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we actually have a fairly robust agenda tonight. We have several things eligible for consent, so we'll start there. Up first, without objection, I'll place our work session meeting minutes from June 3rd on the consent agenda, and then also our commission meeting minutes from June 3rd on consent. Item A is PUD 22-26. South Beck and Baird is the applicant. The address for the project is 408 North Allenbaugh Street. This is a time extension for a conditional use permit for a planned residential development. That's a straight time extension, so without objection, I'm also going to place item A on the consent agenda. Likewise, item B is PUD 22-34. Glancy Rockwell and Associates is the applicant. Project address is 1404 South Philippi Street. This is also a time extension for a CUP for a planned residential development. Again, there, without objection, I'm going to place item B on consent. And then moving through new business tonight, looks like item number 2 is also eligible for consent. This is CUP 23-59. The applicant is Idaho Electric Signs. The address is 5550 East Warm Springs Avenue. This is a CUP for an electronic message display associated with an existing educational institution. On 3.23 acres in R1C zone. And is the applicant present tonight? Great. And let the record show the applicant is present. And are you all in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Okay. Let the record show applicant is in agreement with the staff report. Is there anybody attending tonight hoping to testify in opposition to this item? Okay. We have a hand up. Okay. Sure, you're in opposition of item number 2? Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and keep item number 2 on the agenda. Okay. All right. Moving along. Up next, item number 4 is CVA 24-9 and CUP 24-17. The applicant is Amanda Ryan Designs. The project address is 820 North 19th Street. This is a variance to encroach the interior side setback for an accessory structure on 0.11 acres in R1C zone, and then a conditional use permit to expand the building square footage of an accessory structure. And I believe the applicant is online. Ms. Ryan, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
You bet. Are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yeah, everything looks good.
Okay, great. And is there anyone attending tonight hoping to testify in opposition to this item? Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and place item 4 on the consent agenda. And then last but not least for consent is item number 6. This is CAR 24-2, JUB Engineers. The project address, well, it's the southwest corner of South Warehouse Way and East Freight Street. This is an annexation of approximately 76.31 acres with a zoning designation of I2, heavy industrial. Is the applicant present? Great. The applicant is present, and are you in agreement with the staff report? And the applicant is in agreement with the staff report. Is there anyone attending tonight hoping to testify in opposition to this item? Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and place item 6 on the consent agenda. And with that, I will entertain a motion regarding consent.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Mooney, please.
I move that we approve the consent agenda with the following items: the meeting minutes from 3 June, the work session minutes from 3 June, as well as item A, a time extension, PUD 2226, item B, another time extension, PUD 2234, as well as item 4, CVA 24009 and CP 2417 at 820 North 19th Street. And finally, item 6, CAR 242 at the southwest corner of Warehouse Way and East Freight Street.
Second.
Great. Thank you very much. Got a motion to approve consent by Commissioner Mooney with a second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion? Excellent. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Mooney,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Doan,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, great. Thank you all. And we'll go back to the top of our agenda. That leaves items 1, 2, 3, and 5 to hear tonight. So that's our agenda. We'll take them in order. Up first is item number 1, ZOA 23-10, Clark Wardle LLP is the applicant. Address is 3122 South Old Hickory Way. This is a zoning ordinance amendment to modify certain blocks, block prototypes, and street sections associated with the town center and village green blocks in Harris Ranch on approximately 18 acres. We're going to hear from staff first. Sabrina Mortensen. Hi, Sabrina.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Mooney. Yeah.
I serve as the Neighborhood Association President for Barber Valley, so I'd like to recuse from items 1 and 2.
Sounds good. Thank you, Commissioner Mooney. And with that, take it away, Sabrina.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The item before you is a request for a zoning ordinance amendment to modify certain blocks, block prototypes, and street sections associated with the Village Center and Village Green blocks on approximately 18 acres within the Harris Ranch specific plan zone. The Harris Ranch specific plan was originally adopted in 2007, and development within the Harris Ranch community is guided by the specific plan. The land use development plan for Harris Ranch, which is shown on this slide, identifies development blocks and provides a planned land use for each block. For each block, the plan also provides a list of allowed uses and a selection of block prototypes, which dictate the applicable setbacks, height limits, building orientations, and other development standards. The plan also includes street sections, which dictate design specifications for streets within the specific plan area. Since the plan's adoption, there have been multiple amendments to accommodate modifications to the plan development over time. The application before you this evening proposes amendments to the street sections and land use plans within the Village Center and Village Green blocks of the Harris Ranch specific plan. The project area and a summary of the proposed amendments are shown on this slide. The first group of amendments proposes the incorporation of 5 new street sections into the Harris Ranch specific plan, 4 of which are shown on this slide. The proposed street sections would incorporate angled on-street parking spaces on local streets surrounding the mixed-use Village Center and Village Green. The applicant also proposes a new street section for Park Center Boulevard, which would incorporate parallel on-street parking spaces and protected bike lanes along the collector roadway. The next group of amendments is related to the allowed usage chart and block charts found in the Harris Ranch Land Use Plan. Specifically, the applicant proposes to amend the land use of blocks TC 8 and TC 9 from Village Green with Restaurant to Mixed Use Village Center, and to modify the list of allowed uses for blocks TC 8 and TC 9 to reflect their new mixed-use designation. This change would be offset by the incorporation of a new block TC 10 with the Village Green land use designation. The allowed uses within the new block TC 10 would be limited to a selection of civic and recreational uses, with a push cart being the only commercial use allowed. The applicant also proposes the addition of 3 new block prototypes, each of which would allow a different conceptual layout to be applied to the Village Center and Village Green area. 2 of the proposed prototypes would supplement the primary green space located within block TC10, with additional linear open spaces that would run through the Village Center. The 3rd prototype would maintain a larger Village Green within block TC10 and allow a street connection through the Village Center, as is anticipated in many of the existing block prototypes within the plan. Public comments have been received from the Barber Valley Neighborhood Association and multiple residents of Harris Ranch. Some residents have expressed support for the proposed revisions, while others have expressed concern regarding the proposed street sections, block prototypes, and allowed uses within the project area. The Neighborhood Association's comments indicate that they are generally supportive of the proposed amendments, but request certain modifications, which are summarized on this slide and detailed in your packets. As detailed in your packets, the planning team finds that the proposed amendments will allow for increased creativity and flexibility in the design of the Village Center and Village Green, while preserving the specific plan's intent for this area. The planning team is generally supportive of the proposed amendments, with some recommended revisions, which are detailed in your packets and summarized on this slide. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval with the recommended revisions detailed in the staff report, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sabrina. All right, next we're going to hear from the applicant.
Members of the commission,
Hey.
Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street in Boise, representing the applicant.
Mhm.
And before we start, we're actually going to have a 3-person, 3-ring circus for you here tonight. So
Okay.
we're going to start with Doug Fowler, who will give you a little bit of the history. Some of you have been around for a bit. Others may not be as familiar with some of the things that we're trying to do here. Then we'll hear from Brad Hilgren, who is a member of the group that is going to actually do the development, and he'll talk about sort of the high-level goals. And then you'll get me back again to talk about how I tried to translate all of that into these SPO1 revisions. So I'll start with Doug.
Okay, sounds good. I guess Heath, real quick too, is 10 minutes going to do it? Do you need more
It might be
time?
A little tight, maybe.
Right, we'll plan for 15 and
Yeah.
go from there. Okay,
That sounds great.
okay.
Good evening. My name is Doug Fowler. I'm at 10087 West Tributary Lane, Garden City. Good evening. It's been a long haul. Most of, or a lot of things that have been done at Harris Ranch were not requirements, but were done voluntarily by the Harris family and our Charette stakeholders many years ago to honor the vision and legacy of Dallas and Alta Harris, the partnership's parents. Beginning in 2006, we hosted a charrette with about 70 stakeholders and for 4 days in a row. And a month later, did it 2 days in a row. And we did it every month after that for the next 6 or 7 months until it was unanimously approved by Planning and Zoning and City Council in 2007. I've only had it happen once in my 41-year career that the city council actually stood up and gave a standing ovation, not just for the project, but for the process we went through. That process spawned the first specific district ordinance in the city of Boise. It is commonly referred to as SPO1. The easiest way to get your head around it, at least for me, is Harris Ranch has its own chapter. Of course, after all that work, the plan was perfect, or maybe not. Some adjustments have been necessary to reflect the realities of an ever-changing market and the continued evolution of best practice. For example, we're approved for over 800,000 square feet of office and retail. And given what's happened with COVID and Amazon, we know what's happened with retail and office. In making these adjustments as time has gone by, we've kept them to a minimum to honor the efforts of those volunteers of some 70 people that were involved in the charrette process, as well as the representations that we've been making for the last 17 years to buyers in Harris Ranch. A couple of those request adjustments will be presented to you this evening. For example, bike lanes. We put in over 8 miles of bike lanes that were well received 17 years ago. They shared them with cars. Now, when you look at the bike lane design on 11th Street, it's shared with pedestrians instead of cars. We learn, we get better. In addition to the bike lane configuration, I'd point out to you that you'll see the configuration of the village green change to a more human scale, but still maintaining the same amount of open space or more. The southerly section of the village green has been reduced and reallocated throughout the rest of the project. Yet what remains in the southerly portion is still larger than Union Square in San Francisco, to give you some context. Additionally, no change in the number of units or the type of unit is being proposed. It's now my pleasure to introduce you to Brad Hilgren, who Harris Ranch has selected to be the developer of the town center in Village Green.
Doug, thank you. Good evening, Chair Schaefer, members of the commission. My name is Brad Hilgren, and I can't tell you how pleased I am to be here tonight. We've been at this for quite some time and appreciate the chance to take this step forward and engage in the public dialogue on our plans for the town center. My goal this evening is to ensure that you all are aware of our long-term vision for the town center, that you understand our process and commitment to it as it's been to date and as it extends going forward, and then some of the planning goals and design elements that we have that will be part of that town center. We are, as Doug described,
Sorry,
fortunate.
could we get your address too real quick?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Little,
Yes.
little homework.
You want
Thanks.
office or home?
Office is fine.
877 West Main, Suite 501, Boise. You bet. Start with a few thank yous. The work that Doug described to develop this specific plan is monumental. It's a remarkable plan that we've had a chance to work in and through over the last number of years. The Harris family, Doug and team, and all those at the city that have been involved in it have left a great legacy and a great place for us to start in the development of the town center. Also like to thank the community. The Barber Valley Neighborhood Association particularly has been actively engaged with us and vice versa. And the plan has become better as a result. And the city itself appreciate your time, and particularly Sabrina's, who did an amazing job of summarizing a remarkable project that we're looking forward to develop. Our commitment to the completion of this project is to realize the vision which was established in the specific plan by the Harris Ranch Consortium, including particularly the Harris family, Doug Fowler, and the community of Boise. We're committed to be engaged with the community. I think hopefully you'll hear from members of the BVNA and the community that we have been over the past number of years, been actively involved with the community and will continue to be so. Whenever possible, our goal is to improve the design. As Doug described, the world's changed a lot in 20 years. Our goal is to bring a market-worthy project that has legs to stand for the long term. And that goes to maintaining our long-term vision. Everybody wants this project, including us, as quickly as possible, but we want to make sure it stands the test of time. Our process to date, we have been involved with Harris Ranch and Barber Valley Development working on this conceptual plan for over 3 years. We had a design competition that began 3 years ago this summer. We brought 2 world-class architectural firms to Boise to understand the site, to understand the market. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the things that we challenged them with as part of this process. We ultimately, 3 years ago this fall, had an unveiling, if you will, or a competition, public meetings where they presented the plans, their proposed ideas for the town center. Challenge was we didn't give them a budget, but we gave them some ideas, and they came forth with some really terrific options for us to consider. The firm that we picked is called Rios. They are based in Southern California. They have offices around the world, and they truly are a world-class organization, and we're really pleased to have them here to help us design this. Community involvement, I described the fact that we've been involved with Barber Valley Neighborhood Association. The board has been fantastic. We've had meetings with general members. We get all kinds of emails. We try and respond as well as we can to all of those. They were also gracious enough to establish a task force to look with us directly at some critical issues related to the sidewalk, street designs, and the bike lanes. And so why would we do all of this? Because the outcome is actually improved through this process. We think there will be a better, safer Village Green, particularly with the development along Warm Springs. We think the roadway design is better. We know that the bike lanes are certainly safer getting the bikes out of the streets and up on the sidewalks. We think the streetscapes are going to be prettier. The added landscape that has been requested, we're happy to do, and we think it's going to be a much more handsome environment. And most importantly, this is going to take a while, and we've established working relationships throughout the community that we think are going to help benefit this project going forward. So vision elements that we posed to our architectural team was maximize the location attributes. As you all know, Harris Ranch has been received as one of the great planned communities anywhere in the West, and particularly here in Boise. The site itself extends from the river trail system almost to the foothills, 3 full blocks, almost a quarter mile from one end to the other. It's a beautiful piece of real estate with all kinds of wonderful attributes. We want to make sure it is authentic Boise. I won't pick on projects that are transplanted, if you will, but we think it's important that the town center for Harris Ranch feels like it's been a part of Boise since the beginning. I'd throw out a couple of spots that I would consider to be iconic, authentic Boise, which would be 8th Street and 13th Street are spots that we want it to feel like as it relates to feeling like it's been in existence for a significant amount of time. Quality and sustainability. Sustainability is typically thought of as what are we going to do to save energy and so forth. This really is, we want to make sure that we've got a project that sustains public interest for an extended period of time. And so quality is very important to us. Multi-generational, it really needs to serve the complete community of Harris Ranch and East Boise. And community creating and serving. Serving is easier to understand, but creating, we want to have spaces that actually help the community be a community, to host events and do things that expand the sense of community in East Boise. And outdoor and pedestrian oriented, my gosh, a day like today is just a prime example of why that's a critical element. So those are the items that we pose to our architectural team. Uh-oh. And then we gave them some images to consider in terms of creating places within the town center that are important. Opportunities to stroll, as I said, it's a quarter of a mile to connect that. It's a quarter mile in length from one end to the other. And the opportunity to connect it to the river trail system, the pedestrian ways that extend all throughout Harris Ranch is vital. Dining obviously is a very important destination. And so a series of restaurants and food opportunities throughout, and opportunities and places to celebrate community, to really have those great events that mark the calendar, to meet, to play, to hold events, to learn, to be entertained. And we think if we're successful, it will be of enough value and people will have had enough great times there that people might even think about hosting a wedding in the town center. some of the concepts for the village green and the space that will be the grandest, widest open space, if you will, is adjacent to the new Dallas Harris Elementary School. There's opportunities to create amphitheater. There's opportunities to create some fun recreational spots. There's chances to do educational gardening and so forth. And so we would like to incorporate all of those into the 3+ acres that will be dedicated open space in that specific area. And there's a roadway section on Haystack, which is not dedicated. And we have the opportunity now that Dallas Harris Elementary School is in place. Our Timbers apartment community is in place, and we really have a chance to understand the traffic patterns. It's a roadway that we think can be better served, or the community can be better served by keeping that private and creating more of a plaza space and really a gathering spot for the community. I'm not going to read all this to you, but 3 elements that are important for us to be able to try and achieve this are distributing that public space that was all aggregated on one block throughout those 3 blocks now, so that it serves a wider section of the community. Providing angled parking along the perimeters of the block gives us some additional capacity to serve. It will also provide some traffic calming that we think is beneficial. And then I just talked about the Haystack connector. If we can convert that into more public plaza area, that's our goal. So those are the key things that we're intending to do. I'm now going to turn it back to the third guy in the ring, Heath, who can deal with the technical.
There we go. Members of the commission, Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street. So as I begin, I just want to emphasize, and I'll this will be the nuts and bolts element of the presentation. I want to emphasize that this is not a new project. I think there's maybe some misconceptions about what it is that we're actually doing here. SPO1 is actually already approved for 2,439 dwelling units, 843,000, almost 844,000 square feet of commercial. There is no changes proposed to all of that. We anticipate coming in well underneath that. And what that means for all of us is just that the hundreds of thousands of dollars that have been spent on traffic impact studies don't have to be redone, because we're going to be under what is already been approved. And those impacts should be lower than what has previously been studied. We are not proposing any changes to the permitted uses. We are not proposing changes to setbacks, heights, any of those sorts of things. Instead, we're trying to create a more pedestrian-friendly town center by reallocating, not reducing, that open space and modernizing our street sections with a focus on bike lanes. So you saw something like this when Sabrina showed you her slides. So this is SPO1 as it currently exists. The inset is the town center area, and you can see that it is split down the middle, the TC4, 5, and 6 and 7 blocks by a local street. You also have the green area, which is the current village green. That is combined across what we've referred to as TC8 and TC9 over the years. There was never really a delineation between what those two meant. And so this is an opportunity to revisit that and clean it up as we try to create that linear open space component through the middle of the town center. So again, Village Green previously had those 2 designations on it with an entitlement of for a 10,000 square foot restaurant. And something that I think folks might not have been particularly aware of, also needed some additional definition. So as we do this, the first thing we needed to do was to create a new town center block designation. So that's TC10 for the Village Green. On the right, you can see the allowed uses, and Sabrina kind of went through this for you. By creating a new TC10 column, we were able to separate that out and then leave the commercial type uses on TC8 and TC9 and restrict the uses on TC10. So there's no longer that restaurant designation on TC10. That all moved over to TC8 and TC9. That allows us to create the 3 block prototypes that you've seen. So interestingly, SPO1 has 39 numbered block prototypes, but they're A, B, C, D, E. So actually there's over 70 block prototypes in SPO1 as it currently exists. So you can understand the brain damage I've suffered over the years. The one element that I would point out is that in a prior amendment, we reserved block prototypes 13, 14, and 15. So we actually had a convenient place to place these new ones. So block 13 is the one that has the village green kind of opening up to Warm Springs. Block 14, I think, is the preferred route at this point, if there is one, and that has the kind of protected green space from Warm Springs. And block prototype 15 is really just current SPO1, but with the town center block identified as TC10 and that restaurant area separated out. So we needed this to make it consistent with the use charts as we've modified them, given the new block prototype identifications. Again, no new uses added. Same heights apply to all the TC blocks. You can see the block prototype chart for block prototype 14 that's on the right side of the screen. That was a cut and paste from 17E, which is one of the existing block prototypes. So the same 60-foot height limit in the middle with 45 feet on the side continues to apply. These are some of the street sections. I would just point out, if you look closely on Barnside Way to the south, there's a vertical line that has PL at the top. That's the property line. So what you can see there is that's the side facing the town center blocks. And so where that property line is where the diagonal parking would go in and then extend into the TC blocks with the 2.5-foot separator that BB&A has been looking for, followed by a bike lane, planter strip, sidewalks. Old Hickory looks essentially the same. You have the property line with the diagonal parking going through it. Park Center has been the one that's had the most conversation, in part because we went to ACHD and asked whether we could have 45-degree or angled parking on Park Center. ACHD is not a fan of the angled parking on Park Center. And so we're proposing parallel parking. So you can see that just within the property lines there. And then you have the 2.5 feet of separation as we had on the others, followed by the bike lanes, the planter strip, and the sidewalks. So from a vertical perspective, this is what it looks like. You can see the parallel parking squares moving against the existing curb, with the new bike lane brought interior to the sidewalks. And on your right, you guys are probably familiar with this, but that's 11th Street. So we think the look and feel of it's going to be very similar to that. So again, if I were to summarize, we've said a fair number of words, but this is actually a pretty straightforward application. We want to put in a new linear open space concept, and we needed to provide 3 block prototypes and street sections to accommodate that. Again, we are not changing any uses. We're not changing loud height or setbacks, not changing number of dwelling units. So with that, we are in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report. I wanted to say in particular, we appreciate BB&A's work on this. They've spent a lot of hours with us. I also wanted to thank Sabrina. I think Sabrina is my 6th planner. I've worked on this with Harris Ranch at this point. So she comes from a long line of, back to Josh Johnson and Todd Tucker and Saline and all those. So I appreciate how detail oriented she's been. She's caught a number of things that I didn't catch, and it made the product better. So with that, happy to answer questions.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Heath. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Before we go to questions, we're going to check in with the Barber Valley Neighborhood Association first. So, yep. Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Gary Veazey, 4150 Macbeth Avenue, and I'm Secretary of the Barber Valley Neighborhood Association. I'm pleased to be able to comment on this important and largest project in Barber Valley. I would like to thank Sabrina for her engagement and quick and reliable replies to BB&A's questions. I also would like to express the board's appreciation to Brad Hilgren for meeting with the board and neighborhood 5 or 6 times, in addition to other groups such as the Harris Ranch HOA. We have had good planning discussions, and he made his contact information available to neighbors so they could express their points of view regarding the project. BB&A has worked hard to ensure our neighbors are aware of the application details, as well as educate them about what a specific plan is and how it functions, given it is a unique planning code. Given its complexity and function of outlining criteria and providing guardrails for development, we have had numerous monthly neighborhood meetings and communications addressing the project. The BV&A board voted to support the amendment, and we couldn't be more thrilled about the project moving forward beyond these early planning phases and closer to this mixed-use asset being built in our community, providing much-needed goods and services. While we support your staff's recommendation for approval, there are a few minor modifications that will further clarify the requirements and intent of the specific plan that we'd like to address. BV&A provided 2 pieces of written testimony regarding the nuts and bolts, as Heath called them, and I'd like to direct your attention to the 1-pager dated June 27th, as well as Sabrina's recommendation on packet pages 187 and 188. We have provided several revised recommendations for your consideration. Staff recommendation 1A addresses ACHD's position on this application, and we suggest that this matter not be scheduled before council until the ACHD staff report is available to the public for review. This application includes street typology and streetscape design details, and to take final action on this application prior to reviewing a published staff report would be inappropriate. Candidly, we don't quite understand why your commission does not have a report in front of you tonight for rendering a recommendation, but in no event should this go to council prior to understanding ACHD's position on all matters concerning this proposal. For staff recommendation 2B and 2C, we request the same clarification for both that candidly an ACHD staff report would likely address. Sabrina, if you don't mind, if you could put up page 21, it would help illustrate our concern.
Is that the page that you're looking for?
No, it's the street sections 8AA and
7A and AA and 8A and AA.
I think it's packet page 21, not the project report.
Let's see.
It's not on this other. There we go. Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. Street section 7AA, 8AA, and 8AAA show on-street diagonal parking with the curb several feet from the vehicle's wheels. Given concrete wheel stops are not proposed and likely will not be allowed by ACHD in the right-of-way, motorists will pull forward to the curb until making contact, and in so doing, overhang a sidewalk, a bike lane, or a planter, and no buffer will be provided, thus reducing the sidewalk or bike lane by several feet. Coincidentally, on section 5AA on page 19, it is shown correctly with a 30-inch buffer zone that does not reduce the bike lane. A car overhang or buffer zone meeting ACHD standards should be required for the reference sections, and an extension of the proposed sidewalk, bike lane, or landscape planter should be required, such that the car's overhang does not reduce the required dimension for these elements. For instance, a 5-foot bike lane should be 5 foot clear, not 5 foot wide with a 2 to 3 foot car overhang encroaching into it. We're not sure why this is not being proposed or required, as it is common parking standard and requirement. Thanks for sharing those, Sabrina. Staff recommendation 2G and the village green size minimums. With regards to the size minimums, BV&A's suggestion simply aligns the village green size minimums with Heath's May 29th letter to staff on packet page 50 for reference. in which he states, per our discussions, TC 10 will include a minimum of 4 acres, with the remaining 2 acres distributed across the new linear open space. Make no mistake, BV&A wholeheartedly endorses the elimination of the vehicle core and converting it to a pedestrian and experience-oriented space by providing a high-quality linear promenade with landscape nodes, seating areas, water features, and other public space amenities. The staff is only requiring 5 acres, despite the 6-acre offer by Mr. Clark. Therefore, we recommend a note be added to block prototypes 13, 14, and 15, requiring an open space minimum of 4 acres for TC 10 and 2 acres in the linear open space. A note should also be added that no public or private streets be included in this footage, for example, on Haystack. BV&A is also requesting 2 additional requirements. To provide public convenience, diagonal parking should be provided on Park Center. Apparently, ACHD opposed the diagonal parking that the applicant has proposed, which is the most appropriate solution. Parallel parking is inconvenient and will choke Park Center access into the project. It will be inconsistent with the other perimeter parking at the site, given the medians. There is no ability to go around a motorist having difficulty parking. We feel the city should endorse this position and express this vision to ACHD. Unfortunately, we have no background on this matter, given ACHD has not produced a staff report. Further, BV&A supports back-end angled parking at the perimeter. It has been installed at several locations downtown, and we think there would be value here too. The most common issue identified with back-end angled parking is the brief learning curve that comes with the configuration. We urge your consideration of back-end angled parking to achieve more efficient traffic operation and safer conditions for motorists, pedestrians, and cyclists. BV&A proposes a recommendation that 60-degree diagonal parking on the Park Center frontages be provided, subject to ACHD approval, and that all diagonal parking at the perimeter of the property be back-end angled parking. Finally, on packet page 46, Mr. Clark's May 2nd letter to Ms. Mortensen makes reference to an enhanced access to Greenbelt and goes on to say, in part, the proposed plan includes an active connection to the trails located directly across Warm Springs, likely by a bridge spanning the roadway, allowing access safe from traffic. BV&A supports a crossing, but can find no reference to an enhanced access in the amendment. As such, we urge the addition of a requirement that prior to the city council hearing, the applicant graphically depict a design for the proposed enhanced crossing at the Warm Springs bypass to connect the Greenbelt and town center. In closing, BV&A's 6 suggestions will more clearly define the specific plan requirements, and we feel these can be worked out with staff and the developer without delay if you require them. As a board and neighborhood, this amendment is the final input that we will have the opportunity, where we will have the opportunity to publicly provide testimony before P&Z or council. If approved, the developer obtains the entitlement to construct any project that complies with the specific plan without further community input. And while we understand that this is inherent in a specific plan, the challenge is that specific plans don't provide a clearly defined project proposal for us to review, but rather a broad set of guidelines. As such, we hope you understand our desire to get it right now and make sure it is abundantly clear. That is the goal of our suggestions. We endorse a recommendation of approval to the council, but a recommendation which includes a motion to incorporate the clarifications I have outlined. Thank you for the important work you all do. for the city and our neighborhoods and your consideration of BV&A's points regarding the proposed amendment. Thank you. Be happy to answer any
Yeah.
questions.
Thank you, Mr. VC. Yeah, please stick around. We'll probably have some
Will
questions
do.
for you. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Okay, thanks everybody for your presentations. Let's go ahead and open this up for questions by the commission to staff, the applicant team, and or the neighborhood association. Okay, well, everybody gathers their thoughts. I'll start us off then. Sabrina, let's chat about ACHD a little bit. We don't have a staff report, as Mr. VC mentioned in his presentation. Any sense on how we handle, I don't disagree with the commentary that it would be good to have that report before this goes to council. Any input as to where ACHD is in the process of reviewing this application?
Mr. Chair, ACHD was transmitted this application prior to the June Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, and we have not received comments from them formally, but we have received some preliminary input.
Okay.
We expect to have their formal comments soon and before the city council hearing.
Okay, all right. So really not, you don't anticipate any issue there. Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay. We're gonna have some questions, team.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I'll take one. So, but I'm assuming that, and this is for the applicant, I'm assuming that throughout the process, you worked with ACHD and talked to them and kind of maybe even sent them some of these sections. I mean, just based on some of your commentary about Park Center, they're probably semi-familiar with what you're proposing and have provided at least some preliminary comments. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So we've been in conversations with the larger community for years. I went and sat down with ACHD starting at the end of last year, and then we were there again in the spring. Walked them through what we were proposing, showed them angled parking on Park Center, got a very strong reaction that they didn't like it very much. And so that is the process we're working through right now. The overhead view that I showed you on the presentation and all those street sections have all been provided by us directly. And then Sabrina has also done the transmissions. So, good working relationship with ACHD through all of this. I anticipate that Mindy will have comments out shortly. We just don't have them yet. But we know generally where they're at. They just don't like the angled parking.
Gotcha. Mr. Chair.
Please.
So it sounds like you've received some informal comments and incorporated them already to date.
That's correct. Yeah, we would have had 45-degree, or not 45 necessarily, but angled parking on Park Center on the drawings, if not for the conversations with ACHD.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Milt, please.
question for you, Heath. You heard BV&A ask us to put in a concrete requirement for 4 acres in TC10 and 2 acres of linear space, open space for a total of 6. What are your thoughts about that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, and thanks to Mr. VC for reminding me on my letter. The way I would approach that is essentially a no net loss rule is the way what I would look at it. So what my letter didn't accommodate is that 10,000 square feet of restaurant and non-open space that was in the original. So it's going to be 5-ish acres total that was currently in SPO1 and would be going forward. And so we like that concept of no net loss. I'm trying to adhere to the spirit of what I said in my original letter there when I say that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have another question if you want.
Yeah, go ahead, Milt, please.
So I'm just a little bit confused. The 3 block prototypes you showed specifically for the south end. Are you saying you're not sure which of the 3 you want to build and you want to have the flexibility to choose either 1, 2, or 3, which I think were 13, 14, and 15. Is that essentially what you're asking?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, to a certain degree, yes. So the way that SPO1 is set up is if you flip through the
Right.
various pages, there is a menu of options
Right.
that when someone goes to buy a particular block within Harris Ranch, they know as long as I build something that's close to this, or this, then I'm entitled to do it. And so we anticipate, or at least the developer anticipates that it's going to be 14, the one that has the separation from Warm Springs. But, we started with 13, 14 actually came as a result of the conversations with BVNA and other folks. And then 15, maybe should we put those
No,
up
you,
there?
you keep going.
Yeah, 15 reflects essentially
No change.
no change, right?
Right.
What we have with SPO1.
Mr. Chairman, question for
Yeah.
Sabrina.
Yeah.
Sabrina, does the city have a point of, because they're pretty different. One puts all the open space right on the south end. And then and then the commercial stuff is north. So it has the open space abutting Warm Springs, a busy street. The other's the opposite. Does the city have a design preference between those two? Or are you open to both?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, I would say staff is open to both. 13 is more similar to what's in the current plan.
Right.
But 14 does have some benefits where that open space does have a bit more of a buffer from Warm Springs where there's higher traffic.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
So just for the benefit of everybody in the audience, then assuming we approve these options, this gives you flexibility moving forward. So then it moves into a pretty typical development process, right? You have a developer come forward with a proposed plan, the public gets to weigh in on that plan. We make it to see you here. Maybe you go just to DR. Can you just kind of explain how that process plays out for the benefit of everybody here?
Yeah, so the Harris Ranch process is a little different than other places because it has a specific plan with very detailed setbacks, building height requirements, use requirements that have all gone through a very detailed vetting process over the course of years. I mentioned the hundreds of thousands of dollars on traffic impact studies. All of those sorts of things have gone into a process that's a little bit more streamlined. So what you would typically see is a developer comes, they make an application to the Harris Ranch Review Board. Harris Ranch Review Board reviews and approves. If it's consistent, then generally they send a letter to the city. The city then runs that through their process, that typically would satisfy the city process moving from there. So Sabrina, I don't know if there's more that you would add to that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's correct. Typically, an application would be reviewed by the Harris Ranch Review Board first. They would provide a letter with their findings, and then the design review team would take it from there.
Okay, great. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Yep.
Thanks, Sabrina.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Milton.
Oh, wait, let her go.
Mr. Chair.
Ladies first, Jennifer.
So I think this is a question for Sabrina. How much, there's a lot of imagery, I'm assuming from Rios in our packet. I'm thinking packet page 34 through it's 42. But that depicts a lot more green space than what's kind of shown in those diagrams with just the green and the black and white. So yeah, what's shown in there is very different than the amount of green space depicted in those more kind of rendery graphics. How much would the development be tied to that imagery showing more green space, or is that just kind of, this is what it's tied to and not that imagery?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Moore, the images that are shown on the slide now are what would be incorporated into the specific plan. Those additional documents are primarily intended as a conceptual rendering for what that might look like.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Good. Okay, Milt.
So I'd like to turn to diagonal parking. I think there's other people here who want to talk about it. Does the city agree with the sort of the premise of both BVNA and the applicant that diagonal parking is preferable where we can fit it, where it's appropriate? You like it in this particular application?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, I think the benefit of angled parking along the perimeter of the town center is that it does provide more on-street parking spaces that are kind of eliminated from the original plan that shows the street that
Right
runs
in the
through the
middle.
center.
Mhm.
So that does kind of accommodate that. It also would likely help with some traffic calming and reducing speeds as folks are moving along those streets. So I think staff is supportive of the incorporation of angled parking surrounding the perimeter.
Thank you.
Heath, Heath, any,
Oh.
oh,
I have
no,
one more.
go ahead, please.
Car overhangs. It took me
Yeah,
a while to
I was
figure
going
that
right
one
there
out.
too, Mel. Okay.
So easy heard, and I actually think that's really actually a great point. If there's no curb, those concrete wheel stoppers, people are gonna pull up till they scrape the chin of their car, which I hate when I do that. But, they are gonna, that is gonna project over that curb that they bump into. How do you feel? So that would basically fixing that, at least on the sides where people are angling in, would require another 2.5 or 3 feet of kind of dedicated right of way for the road grade. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, yeah, we're fine with that. And
Okay.
we, in fact, had updated several of the street sections to include that. Apparently, I haven't
Okay.
gotten all of them, so we'll,
You just need,
We'll
it's
make
a
sure that gets
technical
done.
fix before the
Correct.
council.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, so no
All right.
issues with that.
That is a real deal when you're on a bike. So,
Oh, yeah, and I cycle a lot, so
Yeah.
I feel that one for sure.
yeah.
And maybe for what it's worth, with regard to the remainder of the BB&A recommended additional conditions, maybe I could run through those for you and just respond
Sure.
to each one.
Yeah, please.
So with regard to the ACHD report, and hopefully if I miss any of these, please stop me and tell me if you think I missed something. With regard to the ACHD report, I already mentioned that we anticipate that would be coming anytime, so we don't see that as an issue. Car overhang, I just mentioned that we'll go back over the street sections and make sure that works. With regard to the amount of open space, our response is let's adhere to the no net loss rule and go that way. Diagonal parking on Park Center, again, we started with that.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's a hill I want to die on. If ACHD says then absolutely no, it's their right of way. And in fact, it's already been dedicated. So, they would be in control of that and could say no. The back end angled parking, that to us is more of we're somewhat skeptical in this setting that that's the best approach. I would call that a continue the conversation kind of a point. If you can take my foot out of my mouth if you want to, Doug and Brad. And then on the enhanced crossing, that's something that the Harris Ranch has been actively looking at I've been working on the project for 12 years now, and we've been looking at options on that for a long time. You can see that we have the connection down to Warm Springs that's shown on those block prototypes. We anticipate, and that's what should be included within a block prototype, is just the area that's within the 4 corners of that block. We're going to continue that work, and we're going to continue working with BB&A, but what that looks like is probably a longer term conversation and not something that we see as being appropriate as a requirement of this SPO1 application, if that makes sense.
That was the list I had written down from Mr. VC. And he's given us the nod more or less back there. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that summary, Heath. I was heading that direction myself. So that's good. I guess just real quick, staff, you agree? I think the only thing on that list is just kind of working through these acreages, that the neighborhood association recommended 4 and 2. Heath's suggesting no net loss, and it's somewhere in the 5-ish range. At that point, do you agree with those numbers?
Mr. Chair, roughly, yes. On the slide here, you can see the list of allowed uses in the existing open space, which is the TC 8 and 9, versus the list of allowed uses in the TC 10.
Okay.
So as you can see, although that acreage would be reduced, it would purely be for civic and recreational uses, whereas the current plan does allow, some more of those commercial uses. So staff does feel that would roughly even out.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Mel.
why do we have wireless telecom towers in TC 10? There's going to be kids playing around there. I'm going to have
They're gonna be-
people showing up with hats
There's
on.
kids playing with their phones.
Can we take that out?
Commissioner, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gillespie, I would put that in as one of those things that's been there for a long time and people haven't looked at in a while. So I'm being told that that's okay to come out.
Okay, so city, yeah, so.
Okay.
Can you just consider that to be in our motion? Thank you.
Save a
We'll be
step.
here with aluminum foil. It's really embarrassing.
As the land use attorney who every once in a while deals with those hearings, I feel it. Yep.
Okay. All right, gang. Any other questions? We feel like we've made our way through this. Okay. All right. Very good. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks. Thanks, Sabrina. Okay. We had one person sign up ahead of time, Shelley Keene. That's still item one, right? Yeah. Mr. Keene, if you could start with your name and address, please. You'll have 3 minutes to testify.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and commission members. My name is Shelley Keene. I live with my wife, Lynn Humphrey, at 3002 South Barnside Way. Our front porch faces the northeast corner of what you're calling TC5. So right across the street from the northeast corner of the northernmost parcel. Lynn and I welcome the plan to add small-scale retail services and mixed-use development in Harris Ranch. We think it's been a long time in coming. However, we hope your work will make sure that the plan maintains livability for those of us who are existing residents. And here are some of the items we think will make a difference. First of all, on Barnside Way and on Old Hickory, we hope to maintain the 8-foot 6-inch planting space between the sidewalk and the road, at least on our side of the street. We think that will provide some buffer between existing single-family homes and the new development. We'd like to see more of the designated open space that's mostly concentrated in TC10 right now on the north end by Wolf Tree Street. You know, the open space on the southern end gives Greenbelt travelers a transient or transition into the development. We'd like some of that opportunity for existing residents on the north end of what's being proposed. There is an elementary school nearby, and we have lots of children traveling back and forth on their way to school, both walking and riding their bicycles. And so the emphasis on maintaining bike paths and wide sidewalks, I think, is critical for safety and visibility for folks traveling to and from school. And then finally, we keep hearing that a hotel is one of the allowed uses in this development. And although we're in favor of lots of other things being there, we think a hotel is probably not compatible with the area and the neighborhood that is already there and established. It's going to bring too much traffic in and out at busy times of day, and we think it will just impact the livability. So with that, thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Keene. Appreciate it. Okay. Is there anyone else here in person or online that would like to testify on this application? Got a hand up? Please come on up. Podium is yours. And it looks like no one online staff that wants to testify. Okay. Okay, please, name and address, please.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Brian Wilson. My address is 3716 South Millbrook Way in Boise. So I am a resident of the Barber Valley neighborhood. I just wanted to say that we certainly applaud the development of the Village Green and the town center. And I would just like to make a comment that we wanted to make sure as a resident that the development provides sufficient open space, sufficient areas where pedestrians can walk through, have a nice dinner, perhaps at an outside table, and just wanted to make sure that there was as much open space as possible in this area. If I'm looking at the drawings correctly, it looks like they have eliminated the north-south street that would go right up the middle of the town center area. And I think that is a very positive development, allowing that for just free-flowing pedestrian traffic that would provide those types of areas like 8th Street, particularly, where again, it's just pedestrian traffic through a restaurant area, which I think is lovely and would be a real addition to our community. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, anyone else? Podium's free.
Mr. Chair, I do have someone online who
Oh,
raised their
okay.
hand.
All right, thank you, Crystal. All right, Mr. Scott, can you hear us?
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, my name's David Scott. I live at 2576 South Trailwood Way in Boise. It's about 2 blocks northwest of the proposed development. A lot of neighbors have talked about the plan, and I think the best idea to come out so far is flipping the plan, put the green space at the top and push all the industrial stuff down or commercial stuff down. It could be more of a central park for the neighborhood. And if you've ever ridden your bike or walked on Warm Springs, it's a 45 miles an hour fast road, and putting a park near there just doesn't seem right. So I did not know about option 14 until tonight. So I think that's definitely a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Scott. Appreciate that. Okay. Okay, I'll do one more call. I think we're good on testimony. We'll wrap that up and bring this back for rebuttal from the applicant team. Typically, we do 5 minutes, Heath. I assume that's going to work.
I don't think we'll need that much.
Perfect.
So, thank you, Heath Clark, 251 East Front Street in Boise. So with regard to the questions about what will be against the existing residential on either side, one of the reasons I showed you the property line and then the orientations was to show that what we're going to be adjusting is really on the town center side. So I don't believe that there's a plan to change anything along there. And I believe with regard to Barnside and Old Hickory in particular, Sabrina, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're conditioned to do that dimension in the staff report. So I think that Mr. Keene's concern there has been addressed. The hotel is an existing permitted use in Harris Ranch. The point on that though that I would make is again that there's 850,000 square feet of entitled commercial in Harris Ranch. So, you know, if we were operating on the same assumptions that occurred in 2007 through the Great Recession and even 4 or 5 years ago, you would have seen a significantly much larger, I can use English still, a much larger commercial development through there than what you're actually going to see now. While the 850 is still the outside limit, as I understand it, the developer is anticipating somewhere in the range of 150. So reduce the potential traffic that Harris Ranch was designed for, and all of those roundabouts were designed for, and the Warm Springs bypass was designed for. Take that traffic count, reduce it by 75%. And so we think that this is likely going to be something that's more tolerable for folks than what the original plan included. And then Brian, mentioned the areas for pedestrians and all that sort of thing. That's really what we're here to do, is to create that pedestrian element through the middle of Harris Ranch. And we think that the proposal as we've done it, or as is before you, is something that's been heavily vetted. As I mentioned, we've been at this for close to 3 years, actually, at this point. Put on hold for a little while and then in earnest since last fall, and with many, many meetings. And so we think we've gotten to a good proposal, and we would ask for your recommendation of approval.
Okay, great. All right, thanks, Heath. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, well, I'll wrap it up. We'll go ahead and bring this item back before the commission. Just as a reminder, this is ZOA 23-10, and we are recommending to City Council on this motion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I move that we recommend approval of ZOA 23-10 with the added condition to restrict wireless telecom towers from TC10. And for the reasons stated in the staff report with the other conditions stated in the staff report.
Okay, got a motion to approve.
Second.
Got a second by Commissioner Gillespie. Jennifer, you want to start with some thoughts?
Sure, Mr. Chair.
Mhm.
I think, obviously this plan has been developed for years. There have been discussions with BVNA for years. I think that there's a really great kind of discussion going on with BVNA's comments are being addressed to the extent that they can based on ACHD. Some things like diagonal parking on Park Center is, understandably going to require some input on ACHD and may not be feasible based on what they're allowing. And that I'm comfortable with. I think otherwise the modifications could provide something really unique over there. I think the more northern option 14, that starts to incorporate some of the feedback from the neighbors. Ultimately, no changes to uses, no changes in height setbacks, no reductions in green space. I think it does clarify what was shown in the original TC 16 or 17, which the original one that showed the big green block where it's actually not a big green block, but it would have a little piece taken out of it. So it kind of helps to clarify some of that stuff. And ultimately, I think it's a creative use of space and looks like a good development. So.
Mr. Chairman.
Please. Yeah, Milt, please.
So I'll be supporting the motion and I'm not going to suggest any amendments, but I just like the record to reflect what I think should also be done going forward to council. I do think the revisions to SPO1 should require an open space minimum for these two parcels, at least as much open space as is in the current plan, whatever. And we haven't exactly heard that number, but whatever it is, that should be the minimum. I think it's important for everyone to understand, I don't think it's right to require more open space than what is in the plan, because to my mind, the plan that was done in 07 and then has been carefully amended, that's the baseline that we've all agreed to. And I don't think it's a great idea for the city to go back and try and change that very delicate balance that was in the original plan. But I do agree with BV&A that there needs to be some concreteness to that number. Second comment is that I agreed with both the ACHD, the folks who wanted to wait for the ACHD report, as well as I think we had a commitment to make sure that this is a third one, make sure that all the streetscapes, the block diagrams reflect space for overhangs or similar. So that language I think is important. With respect to diagonal parking, I strongly support diagonal parking as much as we can get. Whether it's back end or not, I'm more hesitant to go there because that seems to me to get into some kind of traffic flow, like micromanagement. So all I can say is I personally love the back end parking by the post office on the north end of 8th Street, but I'll leave that for, the real detailed traffic planning people to think about. But I do think we should push ACHD on, like, diagonal parking on Park Center is way better than parallel parking on Park Center, if you ask me. So, and then we got the removing the telecom, right? And that's about it. So I'll be supporting the motion. And I'd like to thank all the parties for their testimony tonight.
Mr.
Which I
Chairman.
normally don't do.
Yeah,
sorry.
please do. Yeah.
I'm going to try to get this out without coughing.
Okay.
I'm also going to be supporting the motion. I think a lot of the suggestions that have been made are good ones, but I also am mindful of not making the perfect the enemy of the good. And, this is the kind of town center we want to see more of around the city. We don't want things like the village that are just out there and everybody has to drive in. This is along an existing active transportation network. It's the perfect kind of development, I think, in that regard. So I'll be supporting the motion. I think it's a great sounding project. I support any some flexibility to get it done in a way that works, but I also think it'll be a good project regardless. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Torres.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Seha?
I will be supporting the, sorry, I've drawn a blank.
fine.
I'll be the motion. And I don't have anything to add. I mean, I agree with Commissioner Moore and Gillespie
Okay.
on their comments. So
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please.
I want to go ahead and, I'm going to support the motion. And again, very thoughtful, I think, of the work that's been done with the community. And I appreciate that. And the amount of green space and the walkability of it is very attractive. I don't live out there, but I'd want to go there. So.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. And I'll also be supporting the motion. I think in a lot of ways, this is, these are good tools to add to your toolbox, right? As you continue to finalize this development and move forward. I think it's, some great suggestions in here, just giving you that flexibility of, building placement, adjacent to Warm Springs, for example. I think that's a great move. And then this pedestrian corridor, for those other two northern blocks, I think is a great move as well. So kudos to the thought process there. And thanks everybody for your input and testimony. I think the only thing we really haven't touched on up here is the Greenbelt connectivity. I'm going to approve the motion as suggested. I'm hesitant to give any more meat to that, how you guys do that, right? Mandating a bridge from up here, I think is an unwise decision. So I think that the way it's phrased in the plans gives you some flexibility. And I think it's a priority to get some good connectivity to the Greenbelt. So I think that's the only thing that my colleagues didn't really touch on here from the rest of the testimony in our running list here. So again, thanks everybody for your input, and we'll go ahead and call the roll here. Again, we have a motion to approve by Commissioner Moore with a second by Commissioner Gillespie.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Seha,
yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Doan,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, very good. All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Moving along. Everybody good? We'll just keep pressing on. Okay. We'll go ahead and move right along to item number 2. This is CUP 23-59, Idaho Electric Signs at 5550 East Warm Springs Avenue. Conditional use permit for an electronic message display associated with an educational institution. This is a legacy code item, and we're going to hear from Ivan Kowalczyk with staff.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the item before you is CUP 2359. This application is a legacy code application. This application is for a conditional use permit for an electronic message display and monument sign associated with the existing educational institution located on 3.23 acres in an R1C DA zone. A conditional use permit is required for EMDs in the R, A, and O zones. The property and surrounding area is located in the Barber Valley Master Plan area with a mix of single-family residential to the west and east and north of the site. To the south is a commercial development and private education institution in the LODDA zone and a multifamily retirement community located in the SPO2 zone to the southwest of the site. One parcel to the south of the site is also in county jurisdiction and is zoned M2 industrial. The proposed DMD will be located in the front set or located near the front setback away from the entrance to the education facility and on a west and east orientation so as to be visible from Warm Springs Avenue. The street frontage of the parcel is approximately 459 feet. The total square footage of the monument sign and EMD is under the maximum background area allowed in these residential zoning districts. The proposed sign meets all height requirements and square footage requirements of the Boise City Code and is detailed further in the project report. These are some elevation drawings and renderings of the sign and its proposed location. You can pause to take a look at them. And as a note, the sign meets all dimensional standards of the Boise City Code. Some comments were received. Comments from the Barber Valley Neighborhood Association addressed concerns about brightness and limiting glare during night operations of the sign. Boise City Code addresses these requirements, and the sign will comply with these requirements to reduce the nighttime brightness of the sign during its operation. ACHD also submitted comments addressing issues with the proposed sign being within a clear vision triangle in its initial stages of development. These concerns have been resolved with a revised site plan located away from the vision triangle. And then finally, one public comment was received in support of the application. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval of the application, and I stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ivan. Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. My name is Jim Namath, Idaho Electric Signs, 6528 Supply Way, Boise, Idaho. And kind of representing both the Boise School District, also Parent Teachers Association, which is going to be fronting part of this bill as well. And also, and all the residents that go to the school here. They're looking for something that's going to give them something on special events, whether it be sporting events or anything like that. I think the sign where it sits right now, it catches the traffic as they enter into the facility. So it's blocked by a lot of landscaping as well, but it still gives them that message. So, and it meets all the qualifications. I think they've been searching for this for a long time. As everybody knows, school's been there a while, and the proposed original site was in the vision triangle. So we've had to move it quite a bit back. Fortunately, it's not the perfect spot, but it gives them some visibility and allows everybody in the community as well. So, it can be a community bulletin board, for any of that as well. So other than that, that's all I have to say.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We'll check in if anyone from Barber Valley Neighborhood Association would like to chime in. Yeah. You guys are a busy night.
Brian Williams, 4069 Shakespeare Way, Boise. I'm here representing Barber Valley Neighborhood Association. Initially, we raised some questions regarding the light intensity, light trespass, and also glare at nighttime. And then also regarding the orientation of the sign and making sure that it wasn't oriented towards residences. We've seen both of these addressed in the staff report, and reading through, we don't really have any other concerns to highlight at this point.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'll go ahead and open up for any questions by the commission. Very good. Well, we're coming. And no questions by the commission. So we will open it up for testimony by the general public. So come on up.
Thank you, Chairman. Commission. My name is David Story, 2740 South Clacton Way, Boise. In regards to the placement of the sign. I live directly to the west of where the proposed placement is. Approximately about 175 feet from the sign. To the other direction, the nearest residence is about 650 feet in regards to where that placement is. Is there any way that we can move that sign down the block a bit? My only concern is just the light intensity, especially at night. My backyard would basically be less than 200 feet from that illuminated sign. And if there's not an option for moving it down, potentially putting some evergreens between the sign and my line of vision, just to obstruct that if possible.
Okay. Okay,
Thank you.
great. Thank you. Okay, I'll just check in and make sure no one else wants to testify. And if you're online and want to testify, raise your hand. No takers. We'll go ahead and close testimony. Time for rebuttal from the applicant. Do you have any rebuttal on the comments that we just heard on during testimony?
So in checking the visual, I think we're blocked far enough from the residential's, the way I looked at it from the visibility and from the property lines. And also the sign can be dimmed from, basically dawn to dusk. So, that's in effect there. There's rules and guidelines that I don't think it'll be a factor for brightness. So again, that's all I have for that part of it. So.
Okay. 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 All right. We got rebuttal wrapped up. We'll go ahead and bring this item back before the commission. Again, this is CUP 23-59. Entertaining emotion.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie, please.
move we approve CUP 23-59 with all the terms and conditions of staff report.
Okay. Got a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Please.
So the city has established standards for the brightness of signs. The city has established standards for where they could go on the property. ACHD has chimed in. The applicant has met all of those requirements. City has requirements for the size of the sign, all this stuff in great detail. The applicant has met all of those requirements. So in a sense, the city has contemplated the issue that the gentleman had and made a decision and set some standards to address his issues. And the applicant's going to abide by those standards. So for that reason, I think we should approve the CUP.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mel. Yeah. Michelle, anything to add as the seconder? Okay. Any other thoughts or comments? Okay. Yeah, I think well summarized, Milt. I agree. We've got quite a bit of distance to the property lines, and like you said, staff has vetted this as well. There is requirements within the code for brightness at night and meeting standards and requirements. I think the applicant intends to meet those, and has to meet those for that matter to meet code. So I will also be supporting the motion. Unless there's any other comments, we'll go ahead and call the roll. Okay, again, we've got a motion to approve CUP 23-59. Motion by Commissioner Gillespie with a second by Commissioner Doan.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Stone,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Okay, we'll move right along. We have another sign application up next. This is CUP 24-13 Lamar Outdoor Advertising. The address is 1421 North 5 Mile Road. A conditional use permit for an off-site advertising sign on 1.7 acres in an MX3 zone. Commissioner Mooney is joining the show once again. Welcome back, Commissioner Mooney. And we will hear from Ivan Kowalczyk with staff again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. The item before you is going to be CUP 2413. This is a modern zoning code application. This application is a conditional use permit for an off-site advertising sign, also known as a billboard, located on 1.7 acres at 1421 North 5 Mile, located in a MX3 mixed-use active zone. The applicant will use a valid demolition permit as it is the applicant will use a valid demolition permit to construct the new billboard in accordance with Boise City Code. The surrounding area is primarily a mixed-use commercial corridor extending from Fairview Avenue south to the subject property on 5 Mile. Adjacent to the parcel on the southern property line are a range of high-density multifamily residential developments transitioning to lower-density R1A and R1C single-family developments that do abut 5 Mile Road. The proposed plan calls for a 40-foot tall, 238 square foot billboard sign to be placed in the southeastern corner of the property closest to 5 Mile Road as seen on this site plan. The sign will be oriented north to south and visible only from the road. The applicant's site plan states that the sign would be positioned 15 feet from the property's front setback and 30 feet from the side property line. A condition of approval for this application will be to relocate the sign an additional 15 feet away from the front setback to account for any redevelopment of the property. If the property is redeveloped, the streetscape improvements, including detached 10-foot sidewalks and landscaping buffer requirements, would require the sign to be removed and relocated at time of development. Here are some elevations and renderings of the sign in its current location or as proposed location. The application does meet the specific criteria requirements for the billboard signs. The sign will not impact the visual quality of any public open spaces. The closest open space is 0.42 miles away from the site due to the east. The sign height is compatible with buildings within the 300-foot radius. Renderings provided to the applicant show that the residential building to the south of the site would not have its view blocked, nor would it block view of the billboard from the street. The direct illumination of the sign will point upward to the billboard face and reduce light spill to adjacent properties. No historic buildings or those of architectural significance exist near the site as well. In conclusion, the planning team recommends approval with conditions of CUP 2413.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ivan. Next, we'll hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Commissioner, Commission members. My name is Dewan Miller. I'm the real estate manager for Lamar Advertising of Boise. Our address is 2250 Empire Way, Boise, Idaho. We're in agreement with the staff report, but we do have an issue with one of the recommended conditions of approval. Specifically on page 7 of the Planning Division Project Report, number 9 of the site-specific approval criteria, paragraph 4 states that new drawings showing the sign's relocation to a minimum of 30 feet from the front setback shall be submitted at the time the sign permit application to account for future redevelopment and streetscape improvements. We feel that this recommended condition suggested by the staff is, at this time unnecessary. And so we are respectfully asking you to please remove it.
As pointed out by the staff in the staff report, our project is in complete compliance with Boise City Code, Chapter 11-4-12, 9, the regulations for off-premise signs, and further in section B2 J, which states setback shall be at least 5 feet from any property line. And our project also complies with the required setbacks of the underlying MX3 zone as is currently proposed with a setback of 15 feet from the front property line. We do not see the need to build today with the current makeup of and utilization of the property as a car lot to a design that fits in with a future development that no one knows what it will be and if our proposed sign will even fit in with that redevelopment at that time. It just doesn't make much sense to limit the current property owner's use of his property and place hazards further into the property that they will be required to work around to accommodate something in the future when we truly have no idea when, if, or what may be developed on the property in the future. And who's to say that our proposed sign will fit in with the redevelopment in the future if it's moved further into the property as suggested by the staff and the conditions of approval. So, what we do know, however, is that it will create issues and hazards for the current owner's use today. We have previously worked with the city, our landowners and ACHD a number of times to relocate our signs to accommodate site improvements in the past. We're currently working with ACHD to relocate one of our signs on State Street to accommodate the road widening happening there. So there are already policies, procedures, and protocols in place to address the relocation of signs to accommodate developments, road widenings, and streetscape improvements. For these reasons, we are respectfully asking you to remove condition number 4 of the site-specific approval criteria and number 9 from the recommended conditions of approval and allow us to build the proposed sign at the current setback submitted of 15 feet from the front property line. Thank you for your time, your attention, and for your consideration of our request this evening, Commissioners. We do appreciate it. I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Miller. Appreciate that. Before we do questions, I'm just going to check in real quick to see if anyone from the West Boise Neighborhood Association is present. It doesn't look like that they are. So we will go ahead and open up for questions by the commission.
Mr. Chairman.
Please, Mills.
So after Mr. Miller's testimony, I'm just a little bit confused. So I have a question for Ivan. Is condition 4 simply asking that a set of drawings be made to reflect a 30-foot setback? And is condition 4 condition 4 isn't addressing where the sign actually goes. It's just saying, can you also provide an alternative set of drawings with a 30-foot setback?
Sure.
Which is
Commissioner Gillespie, through the chair. At the time of the sign permit, building permit, we would request that the new site location be on the drawings. And that would account for the 30-foot setback to accommodate for the detached sidewalks and landscaping buffer.
So I have a question for Mr. Miller.
Yeah.
So Mr. Miller, they're not asking you to move the actual place where you put the sign. They're just asking you to indicate on a drawing where you would put it if there's a change in the streetscape. Wait, what are you? Okay.
Ivan, if you don't mind, maybe if you could pull up.
Sure.
It's on page 242 in our packet, but Mr. Miller also had it in his presentation, just the site plan. Just so we're talking apples to apples.
That
here.
isn't my understanding, Mr.
Yeah.
Gillespie. Of what?
Apparently I'm wrong too. So, or not too. I'm wrong. I think. I don't know.
I was under the impression that we would be required to move it back 15 feet further from where we had proposed it to accommodate something in the future.
Chairman, what page were you referring
Well,
to?
it's in our, it's back several pages. Sorry, it's 242 in our packet. But
I have a slide. I have a
there you
slide
go.
on my
That'll
PowerPoint that
work.
I can bring up as well.
Yeah, there you go. So I believe as presented in our packet right now, the sign's located 15 feet from the back of the sidewalk on 5 Mile.
Yes, sir. Front
Correct.
property line, yes.
Current sidewalk. So Ivan, can you clarify your comment then? You're suggesting with your comment that you'd like to see it 30 feet from the back of the sidewalk.
Yes, we would, Commissioner or Chairman. That is correct. We would like to see the sign moved to the 30-foot location on the property to account for any future development. And that will be on the site plan that would be submitted at time of sign permit.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Commissioner Moore, please.
And
so I'm confused.
sorry,
So it says 30 feet. Is it 30 feet from the property line? Because that
Correct.
image is only showing 20
I-
feet.
I can clarify this a little bit further.
Okay.
Commissioner, if, so we measure the front setbacks from the property line or back of sidewalk or the location of the future sidewalk, whichever is greater. So unless otherwise indicated in the specific zoning district, that is the definition of the front setback in the city code. So we would be measuring it from the future sidewalk location.
Mr. Chair.
John, please.
So on our packet, page 256, staff comment is if the property redevelops, and really the question is when the property redevelops. When the property redevelops, could this billboard remain? I mean, there's many projects I would expect that it could remain. Is that true? Is that a fair statement?
From the Chair or Commissioner through the chair, from the calculations that we have from the property line, taking account for any right-of-way taking the ACHD would do, it would then be necessary to be moved if the property was to be redeveloped.
Mr. Chairman.
No, please.
So is there any formal move to do that taking, change the property line?
Not
Okay.
currently. Thank you. No.
Thank you.
Sorry, I had to stretch my legs.
Mr. Chair,
John.
could I ask Commissioner Gillespie to restate that? Because I'm still confused. And it sounds like you had some clarification there, but I didn't get it.
Well, I just said, look, I mean, I said, is there any formal proposal, like a government action of record to actually increase the right of way, which would push the sign back? And he said, no, not that he's aware of.
Mr. Chair,
Jennifer.
I think the concern that I have is basically we approve the billboard where it is or the sign where it is proposed in 15 feet. Another proposal comes before us and then it's a
The sign has to
hardship.
move.
And then, now we have to move sidewalks around it. Is there a way to condition it? And maybe this is for staff. Is there a way to condition it where if the property redevelops, it must move and it's not a hardship?
Commissioner Moore through the chair, that is the condition that we are suggesting, that by moving it back an additional 15 feet, that the sign would be out of the area where we would see that sidewalk, landscaping buffer that would be developed.
So we're preemptively locating the sign without seeing a development plan for the parcel.
Correct, in the event that the property would be developed.
Okay. And we meet let's take out the future possible development of the parcel from the conversation. Does the proposal as presented in our packet today meet the setback requirements?
Chairman Schaefer, the proposal does meet setback requirements.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
John.
I've got a lighting question. I think it's for staff. So much of this discussion is from 110412, but 110411 has another section on exterior lighting, and it states shield light fixtures may beam light upward only if all upward light is reflected back down. So this kind of talks to light pollution and night dark skies and all that. Obviously, in this area, it's probably less of an issue. But how do we balance those that section that says you can't do this. You can't project light up without catching it with a canopy. Is there a canopy on this, I guess, for the applicant?
So the LED lighting shines right onto the sign's face in the footprint of the sign face. It doesn't go above it, outside of it. It's specifically positioned to just shine right on the face of the sign.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Miller, in your testimony, requesting removal of the condition about the increased setback, you referenced, that you move signs all the time and have made changes in other locations. This is my ignorance about these types of signs. Is there any kind of magic to this sign? It's got a fairly substantial footer, I imagine, and it's got power to it.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything else where it might be missing as far as like how hard it is to install and or remove or move these signs?
No, the footing is under the ground. Typically, in our leases, it states that everything under the ground. So we'll remove right to the ground. The footing would stay under the ground.
Okay.
We would then relocate the sign, put a new footing in at the new location. If that makes sense.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Do it all the time.
Gotcha. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Yeah. Any other questions, gang?
Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify a point that I think Ivan was trying to make that maybe got lost in the shuffle a little bit. So where this condition comes from is again, in the definitions under setbacks and measurement, it does state that front setbacks are measured from the property line or the back of sidewalk or the location of the future sidewalk, whichever is greater unless otherwise indicated in a specific zoning district. And so if there's an existing attached sidewalk, the setback shall be measured from the location of a future detached sidewalk as determined by the city. So that's where that condition comes from. It is in definitions. I just read you the exact definition. So I think maybe it didn't come out as clear as we wanted.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for that, Crystal. That's a tough one.
Let's go to deliberation.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. Mr. Miller, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. I got to check in on, haven't done testimony yet. Anybody here to testify on this item? No takers. Okay. And is there anybody online still, Crystal? No, there is not. Okay. We are in deliberation, team. No. No testimony, nothing to rebut because there was no testimony. You're good, Mr. Miller? Okay. No, we're good there. Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and bring this item back before the commission to render a decision. Again, this is CUP 24-13. And maybe we can start with some discussion if you guys want to go that route first.
I'll tee up just a question for discussion. So the city does seem to have a statutory basis for dealing with a future sidewalk, right? For requiring him now to move the sign based on some future event. I think the problem I'm having is there's no formal movement to create that event. Like there's no pending redevelopment of this street or change to the street. It's not in ACHD's plan. We don't have anything other than, well, just someday it might move to a detached sidewalk. Right? So the code presents us a dilemma on, what constitutes enough certainty to invoke that future requirement, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm just hesitant without any certainty about when or where or how that redevelopment might occur to say that it's a thing that we have to manage against.
Yeah.
So if the city had come and said, ACHD has it in their streetscape plan that in 5 years or 3 years, they're going to do this, or we have a pending redevelopment on this lot and blah, 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 but they're not. Like, we don't have any who, what, when, where. So we have zero specificity on the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, I agree.
So I would vote to strike that requirement if I, but I'll let other people.
I would agree with that thought. I mean, I see where Mr. Miller is coming from, where we're putting a sign 30 feet into the property that would become, I could see that being an inconvenience for circulation around the site. And he's also on the record indicating that they move these signs all the time. So it seems to me that this is I appreciate the spirit of the code in trying to plan out things appropriately and do things once, but maybe in this instance, the better move is to locate it. They're meeting the current condition setback. And they're on the record that saying they can move the sign in the future if need be. So I'm tending to agree with Milt's summary of the situation.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Seah.
I'm struggling with this one, as I look at our agenda, this is part of the modern zoning code. I don't remember if it's just something that was brought in from legacy code, but I am hesitant to deviate from our modern code. We have 12 months to kind of, what I would say, stay within our parameters and then evaluate within 12 months, or city council will evaluate whether there needs to be changes. I'm also reminded of a earlier conversation a couple of months ago regarding the sidewalk. And I don't remember if it was the Starbucks up at the airport, and Commissioner Moore, or maybe it was another street in West Boise, where the developer had asked for, I think, a variance because the sidewalk was going to meander. And I believe, and please correct me if I misspeak here, Commissioner Moore, but I believe there was a comment you made about, like, we're approving this here, and then what we end up having, and maybe it was somebody else, is we have this hodgepodge of sidewalk connectivity, right? And so that's why I understand where, Mr. Chair, where you and Commissioner Gillespie are coming from, but I would not support striking it.
Mr. Chairman, but here's a thought. I mean, I guess the point I'm making is that if and when there is a bigger, better sidewalk put in, basically a detached sidewalk, the city can force Lamar to move the sign.
Right.
Right?
Right. That's how I see it. I mean, I feel like we have.
It's not like it's a one size fits all forever. It's not like the sign's going to be there and the sidewalk's going to have to, meander, like do a big curve around it. At least that's my understanding.
So, Mr.
Please,
Chair,
yeah, please, Esther.
Commissioner Gillespie, so just so that I'm clear, so then you're saying in your initial, you would propose striking it, but then what I'm hearing you say now is that you in the future, if there is something that comes before the city, then the city could require it. So then would you propose some revisions to the staff report with a condition specifically stating that they would have to move it? Because that's not the way that I read the current conditions in the report. Does that make sense?
Mr. Chair,
Jennifer.
just some thoughts. I'm actually against striking the motion for, I think, 3 reasons. So maybe it's 2. The first reason is, I think that code pretty clearly states that it's the greater of whichever option is available, and the greater of whichever option is the future location of the sidewalk, which puts it, 30 feet back. It's far back for now and until the property develops, but that is the way the code is written. And it is pretty definitive. I think the other reason I'm against striking it is those footings have got to be pretty big with a lot of concrete, and it's against Boise's sustainability codes, putting less stuff in the landfill, not sustainability codes, but sustainability goals, putting less stuff in the landfill. It's against all of that and the carbon footprint to pour all that concrete twice as opposed to just the once. You're kind of putting twice that amount of material into the waste stream, twice that amount of material is being used and all that stuff. Instead of just doing it once, we're guaranteeing that it'll at least have to be done once, probably twice, instead of just the one. So I'm against striking it, as funky of a situation as this is, I think it's one of those kind of gray areas that maybe that hard definition, it says the greater of whichever option didn't necessarily anticipate, but to me, it's pretty definitive.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Yeah, Tony, please.
I agree with Commissioner Moore and Commissioner Seha. I think they made a pretty compelling argument on this. I was going back and forth before then, but you know, the code does seem to be pretty explicit about what's required here, and I agree with Commissioner Seha that this code is new. You know, if they're gonna be making revisions based on what works and what doesn't work, we need to see where the issues are, and if we're making changes to the code on every single item we hear, we're obviously not doing that. But if we are, then it makes it a lot harder to know what's working and what's not working, because we're basically deciding every single thing from up here. So I would also be against striking it.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Milt?
We should get a motion on the table.
Yeah, I think we're there. I was just going to suggest that. So I'm entertaining a motion at this point.
Why don't you go ahead and do yours?
Sure. Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I move that we approve CUP 24-13 with the recommended conditions of approval as stated in the staff report.
Second.
Okay. Got a motion to approve as stated in the staff report. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Jennifer?
Not too much additional discussion. I think that section on placement of step back is pretty clear. It reduces materials going into the building, into the, waste stream, all of those good things that help to meet the city's goals, Blueprint Boise, and just further the plan as stated.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair.
John?
I'm digesting all this, and I decided to go to the approval criteria and just figure out where I landed on it. And under approval criteria in our packet, page 258, item 4 is, so I'm struggling with this because the site provides a safe, convenient, efficient network that minimizes conflicts, blah, 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 promotes and supports active, and then the staff's analysis of that decision criteria there throws in at the end, staff has a recommended condition of approval. But when I read that, I don't think that condition that Lamar is disputing changes anything in the bold approval criteria above. That's not necessary to reach this conclusion. So that's where I get leaning towards, I'm in agreement with the applicant because of this particular side of the code. And I guess it generates a question to Commissioner Moore with the motion, which is what I guess I didn't see in the new code where this was really defined. You both, Commissioner Torres said that as well, as what part of the code is so definitive as staff said.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please, Jennifer.
I think to clarify, that would be the under, I think it's front setback definitions that Crystal read, where it states the front setback shall be taken from the property line or the location of something or the location of the future sidewalk. And I think that we're kind of operating under the location of the future sidewalk.
Crystal, do you have that code section pulled up? 1104. No.
Just give me a moment.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, while she's pulling that up,
Go ahead,
I
Dwayne.
believe she said whichever is greatest.
It's not 04, it's
Mr. Chair, it's inconveniently placed between two pages. So there's the first part of the sentence. And the second.
So, Mr. Chair.
Yes, John, please.
So for, what we're then saying is if we take that part of the code that staff just showed us, then that fuels the approval criteria 3, the site is large enough. And what we're saying then is the site
I think this. So I think where I get hung up here, and this is just, Mr. Miller, thank you for your patience. You're a little bit of a guinea pig with this new code and whatnot, right? So we're working through learning here. So I think where I get hung up, and this is definitely a code clarification issue in my mind, is that how can we be certain that we know where the future sidewalk is going to go? Right? Or if it will ever change. Or if it will ever change, right? So that is the question in my mind. Now, in this instance, we're fortunate because there's nothing in the way to put the sign 30 feet from where it's proposed, or 15 feet deeper into the site where it is now, right? There's nothing in the way. Now, if there's a building there, we couldn't do that, right? If there was something else there, we couldn't do that per se. So that's where it's not necessarily it's just it's a code clarification concern in my mind, right? And I think that the applicant makes great points. Like, we have no clue when and if the sidewalk will ever become detached. And maybe it's 100 years from now and that sign's long gone, right? We have no way of knowing that, right? So that's just where I'm struggling with the code and how it's written.
Yeah. I mean, Mr. Chairman,
Mm-hmm.
so my common sense understanding of sort of legal things, right, is when you're trying to define a legal object, in this case, a future sidewalk, the term lawyers use is a nexus. Like who, what, when, where, how. Like those are the things that make up a specific legal object in this case. So I want to know, okay, do we have any idea about when the future sidewalk's going in? No, we don't. Do we have any idea about where or how or why? We don't. Is there any accepted streetscape plan, like on record for this street, that would suggest that someone's actually planned this out? Not that I know of. It's not in the record. And so I can't find that the phrase future sidewalk to me has a tangible enough meaning that I can invoke that particular part of the code. That's just what I think about. Now, maybe the city council met something completely different, but then they got to go back and figure it out and say what it means. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, same. Okay. So, okay, we'll go ahead and let's do this. We got a motion to approve as written. If my memory serves, my notes serve. We have a motion to approve as written. With the motion by, I believe, Commissioner Moore, the second by Commissioner Torres. So I'm going to go ahead and call the roll. We'll see how things fall. Okay. All right.
Schaefer,
No.
Gillespie. Moore,
Yes.
Mooney,
No.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Doan,
No.
3 in favor, 4 opposed. Motion fails.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillespie.
I move we approve CUP 24-13 striking condition 4.
Do I hear
second?
Thank you, Commissioner Mooney. New motion by Commissioner Gillespie, second by Commissioner Mooney. Any further discussion? No. Okay, let's call it.
Schaefer,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Moore,
No.
Seah,
No.
Torres,
No.
Stone,
Yes.
4 in favor, 3 opposed, motion carries.
Wait,
Nope.
Mooney didn't
Mooney.
vote.
We didn't get Mooney.
Oh, Mooney,
Yes.
That's four.
There we go. There's our four.
there's 4, sorry.
Okay. All right.
There we go.
There we go. Thank you again for your patience, Mr. Miller. We appreciate it. Okay. Staff, Ivan, Crystal, thank you. We're gonna muddle through this new code. We're gonna get there. Appreciate it. Okay. You wanna do a quick break? Yeah, we'll do a quick break. Sorry, you guys have been very patient. We're gonna just do a quick break and we'll be right with you. It's a discussion. It's a robust debate. Robust debate. Mary can take it. She's okay back there. All right, our last item tonight. It's item number 5, CUP 2411. The applicant is Hillside Architecture. Project address is 5312 West Franklin Road. This is a conditional use permit for an allowed use alternative form of a minor vehicle repair on 0.46 acres in an MX3 zone. Jesse Lyle has been patiently waiting and will be presenting for staff.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. The item before you is CUP 2411, which is a conditional use permit for an allowed use alternative form of a minor vehicle repair shop located on 0.46 acres at 5312 West Franklin Road in an MX3 zone. The subject property is approximately 20,000 square feet and contains a vacant building and parking within a larger shopping center with a grocery store anchor, and it's located within the Franklin and Overland Community Activity Center. Franklin and Orchard Community Activity Center. The property is adjacent to a bus route with stops at the corners of Philippi Street and Franklin to the west and Orchard and Franklin to the east. Additionally, there is a newly constructed high-density residential development to the southeast of the subject property. The applicant is proposing to redevelop the site with an approximately 2,300 square foot, one-story vehicle repair shop with 12 parking spaces where 6 are required by the development code. Any new development within the MX3 zone containing more than 10,000 square feet of contiguous land area must meet the use-specific form standards, which require buildings to be at least 4 stories in height and do not allow more than the minimum required parking. As outlined in the project report, many of the use-specific and site design standards have been met. However, the proposal does not meet the intentions of the MX3 zone and is not appropriate within the redeveloping activity center. As shown on the screen, the MX3 zone is intended to support active uses and modes of transportation with transit and pathway-oriented development. Additionally, the comprehensive plan has many goals and policies that reference redeveloping auto-oriented activity centers to support high-density residential, active uses, and transportation that supports a pedestrian-friendly environment. The proposal for the auto-oriented use does not meet the urban design and active use goals of the MX3 zone or the use-specific form standards of the zone. The approval criteria for the allowed use alternative form requires a project to promote the urban design goals as well as or better than in compliance with all use specific form standards and to provide an adequate sense of street enclosure for a height reduction. As proposed, the project does not meet these criteria and does not provide a use that supports the goal of the MX3 zone. The applicant contends the CCNRs for the property do not allow for the use-specific form standards to be met, as the height is limited to 23 feet and additional parking is required. Further, the applicant contends that the existing anchor grocery store will not redevelop in the near future. While the CCNRs do limit the ability to fully comply with the form standards of the zone, there are opportunities for the site to redevelop in a manner that is more aligned with the form standards and intention of the MX3 zone and activity center that will support the new high-density housing in the area. As proposed, the use and form would be more suited to an MX2 zoning district, which provides opportunity for a mix of more commercial and auto-oriented uses and does not have specific form standards. As detailed in the project report, the planning team finds that the application is not consistent with the approval criteria for the allowed use alternative form, nor is it compatible with the intent of the MX3 zone or the adjacent community activity center. And therefore, the planning team recommends denial, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Thank you, Jesse. Next, we'll hear from the applicant team, who's also been very patient tonight. Thank you.
The other, yeah. Agreed. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, good evening. Thank you for being here late. We're going to split this up between the two of us. Ryan with Barclay Group will take the second half. So
Sorry, if you could name and address, please. for the
oh,
record,
yeah,
too.
Daniel Zimmerman, Hillside Architecture, 345 West Bob White Court, Suite 120, Boise, Idaho. So our proposed site, as Jesse mentioned, is within the existing Fred Meyer Shopping Center that does have CCNRs imposed on it. As you can tell by this slide, we initially went into the planning staff with this layout, and after meeting with Jesse, we updated the plan to be a little bit more in line with the MX3. We rotated the building 90 degrees to face the garage doors away from the street and provided additional buffer along Franklin with landscaping in the sidewalk. This image shows you what currently exists today out there, a vacant building and an underutilized parking lot, where we have proposed to add the one-story Grease Monkey garage. The elevations show that we are at 22.6, where the CCNRs are restricting any building within that shopping center to be under 23 feet. The approval criteria for alternative form, as Jesse mentioned, where they recommended denial. We are under the impression that after speaking with Jesse, we are kind of one of the first groups coming in asking for an alternative form for this new zoning code. So we do ask for some objectivity while viewing this existing shopping center as a whole, and understand we do not object to the zoning. We believe timing does not benefit the existing long-term shopping center development as it stands today. Although the proposed design and use does not promote all of the overall urban design goals of MX3, the proposal does revitalize the area by removing an older undervalued structure and an underutilized parking lot by combining the two lots and creating a more efficient opportunity for a new use in the community that didn't exist previously, as well as reducing the utilized parking stalls from 30 down to 12. The original zoning C2D was how the developer intended to create new value for the city in terms of increasing property tax revenue when the two parcels were purchased and combined 2 years ago prior to the new zoning. Multiple obstacles would be faced to achieve the density required by MX3, an existing long-term shopping center that currently regulates new construction per the existing CCNRs that have been imposed on the parcel since 2001. Building heights, parking, and use types are all restricted within the CCNRs. The lack of oil change uses that are currently available on the bench with 2 in a 5 square mile area, this will reduce vehicle trips out of the bench for this type of service. Although planning staff cannot provide allowances for the site's private property CCNRs, anyone who develops this parcel will be required to abide by these documents. There will always be a conflict between the zoning requirements and the CCNRs for parking, building height, and use types. Some preliminary performance numbers based on a 4-story mixed-use building on this 0.46 acres show that the rate of return just wouldn't be there for a developer. I have provided a snippet on this slide and highlighted part of the conditions of the CCNRs. Any short or long-term residential uses are not allowed within this, so we cannot do any high-density residential. New zoning and existing CCNRs are in direct conflict with each other regarding the building height, thus rendering this parcel undevelopable until there is an opportunity to redevelop the center in its entirety. The existing anchor tenant will not amend a CCNR document that directly blocks view to their property. Existing height limitations set forth in the document is 1 story and a maximum of 23 feet in height. The next slide provides a letter from Fred Meyer stating that they will not amend the CCNRs. And then my last slide just shows visual context of how we feel like we do fit within the context of the existing community. And I can turn it over to Ryan.
Hello, Ryan Gaston, 1199 Shoreline Lane. I'm with Barclay Group that purchased this property about 2.5 years ago. I approached Kroger, who owns Fred Meyer, 3 years ago when I saw an underutilized building in the shopping center in a parking lot that didn't get a lot of use. They own both the properties. One of the things that we like to do is create value, especially in underutilized buildings and shopping centers. We've actually worked with Kroger, I think on 10 different parking lots across the country where we've taken underutilized parking and redeveloped it and actually brought down the parking ratios in the shopping centers, which we think helps with the sustainability of those shopping centers and creates a more active area. So when we bought this bought this piece of property and we actually combined the parcels 2.5 years ago. We did that under the idea that the zoning that was in place was proper for the uses that we see in a Fred Meyer shopping center. We bought it based on the reliance that zoning would be in place. So to our surprise, the MX3 zoning that was placed on the entire shopping center, truthfully, we felt was excessive. It's going to be very difficult for any pad in this shopping center to ever meet the requirements of the MX3 zoning, specifically because of the CCNRs. I have a little bit of background in approving CCNRs. I actually worked for Albertsons for 3 years in their real estate department. I actually worked for Kroger for 3 years in their real estate department. And the three things they take very seriously is visibility, which is height. That's why the restrictions in the CCNRs. Residential uses in a typical grocery anchored shopping center like this are also very difficult. You will see mixed use developments where grocery anchored shopping centers share with residential, but in this type of standard shopping center, residential parking is very impactful on the shopping center in a negative way. So Fred Meyer is not going to change that use for us. And then the third, the parking, we're asking for 12 stalls, the requirement 6. But I think the better way to look at it is we're taking 31 stalls and making them 12. I think that's the better way to look at it. And we're also cutting off a curb cut that currently goes to that existing structure, not a curb cut that you want in the city right now, too close to the right in, right out that we're going to share with the Fred Meyer Shopping Center. So I think we're helping in the safety of the area, adding new sidewalk, adding new landscaping. We tried to meet as best we could all the MX3 requirements and do the best we could with the use that we're proposing there, which again, as I sat here tonight and listened to that awesome mixed use projects going out in Harris Ranch, we are definitely not that. But I do think we are fitting and conforming very well with the existing development that's there today. And one of the variants, allows for is, does your project, does it fit with your surrounding buildings? And I would say, yes, a 1-story automotive use does fit. It's pretty standard use in a lot of shopping centers today. And what doesn't fit, unfortunately, is 4 stories with residential use. So we are in a bit of a pickle here, I guess you would say, without some sort of lenience with the new code, without some sort of, I guess I would say, real world thinking about how these things go forward. I don't think, I very much support the new code. I think density is huge. I think it's very important in the right areas. I don't think of Fred Meyer Shopping Center as the place where you're going to create density and lower the residential costs for people in the city of Boise. I think there's a lot of better opportunities to do that. I also would like to say that, mixed use, adaptive reuse projects are things that we very much like at our company. We bought 2 buildings right across the street about 3 years ago, Western Proper and the old Louis buildings, I like to call it, and spent A lot of money and a lot of investment to bring those back to life. I think between the two of them, they were empty for 14 years, one for 3, one for 11. So again, we do like those kind of projects, but downtown Boise is where I think a project like that works. Franklin and Orchard in a Fred Meyer shopping center, I don't think is the right area for an MX3 zone. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay. You guys are the only ones left. There's no one online either, right? So let's go ahead and open up for questions.
I beat you,
Mills.
Mr. Chairman.
Mills.
I was quicker. I was already on.
Quick on the trigger.
I have a question for the city. Does the applicant have an opportunity to request a rezone from MX3 to MX2, which would bring it more in line with the CCNRs that they're under? And did you all discuss that with the applicant?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the applicant could request a rezone. That was not something that we had really discussed in detail, mostly because there is MX2 just right to the west across Philippi Street. And this area is in an activity center, which is why it was rezoned to MX3 in the first place.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Jennifer.
So I think this is a question for staff. So basically, it's kind of the city's position that in order to approve this allowed use alternative form, with the CCNRs in mind, you basically would need to put a building along the entire frontage of that parcel. That's the trade-off, right? So you don't get the 4 stories height, you get the width that encloses the street that meets the city's intent. Is that kind of one of the potential options to meet that with the CCNR restriction?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, so on the screen are the criteria to approve an allowed use with alternative form. So really hitting all of those things would be promoting the urban design goals, making sure that the design really does whatever it can to meet those goals, including with the height reduction, making sure that you still are trying to have that urban form and enclosure. And then understanding the impracticabilities to comply with some of these other use specific standards. So there's quite a few things that can be taken into account in this kind of situation. I think that the enclosure was just one of them.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Is that Milt again? Yeah.
Jesse, could you talk about the use itself, the very auto-centric use in an MX3 and how the MX3 does or doesn't encourage that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, so the MX3 zone is called mixed use active. So it's really intended to be for active uses, not really auto-centric uses. It's supposed to be supporting other modes of transportation. So there is a transit line that runs near the property with bus stops on either side, really supporting the wider pathways, so like the 10-foot sidewalk along Franklin Street. And then just in general, being in an activity center, we tend to want more active uses rather than auto-centric uses in those areas.
And you're sure that this property falls within the legal boundaries of the activity center? Because sometimes we used to fuss about that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that's correct.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. John?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Could you go back to the previous slide? There we go. So for staff, then the staff's position is pretty clear that this application will result in underdevelopment of the site. Is that's true, correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, with the intention of the MX3 zoning and the activity center, as well as just, again, not providing some of that urban form that could be achieved in this area, that is staff's position.
Okay. And Mr. Chair, follow. So for the applicant, this site will never pencil out for development as the city sees it. Is that, I think that's the biggest rub, obviously.
Correct. Yeah, there's no way that we will ever meet the MX3 requirements of zoning on a 20,000 square foot piece of property, especially under the height restrictions that we're facing and the use restrictions that we're facing. It's pretty clear that, you know, Fred Meyer believed that this would always be sort of a neighborhood shopping center, and the development in this shopping center would be neighborhood shopping center. And to change that as drastically as the MX3 is asking would be difficult.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, follow up for
Yep.
The issue of covenants in the CCNRs. Could you talk through that piece of the code, the new code 110108, relationship to private covenants and how the code interacts with CCNRs, since this is our first stab at it in the new code?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the development code doesn't really hold itself to private agreements. This is true within HOAs, within other types of developments. So we're looking at this from a city standpoint as, does this meet the development code regulations in the zoning code? And then additionally, with this project in particular, there are opportunities for other kind of mix of uses. In staff's opinion, that doesn't have to necessarily be residential, but that could potentially improve upon the urban form of the area.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Torres, yeah.
this question's for staff. If they were to request the rezone to MX2, I should know this, but how far would this set back the project? I mean, how much of a delay would they be looking at if they were to do that? Obviously, they're here looking for approval today. What would that process look like?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, a rezone would be a new application, and so they would have to have a neighborhood meeting to inform the neighbors of the intent to rezone. They would have to resubmit the application, and then it would get a recommendation from Planning and Zoning for a final decision from City Council.
Okay, any other questions? I think we're good to go. Okay. There's really no reason to call for testimony since no one's left. So therefore, I think we can probably, you gentlemen, if you have, I mean, typically get rebuttal after testimony. There's no testimony, so you can rebut if you'd like, or you want a few final thoughts.
Yeah, just a few final thoughts. The activity zone, I think it's very hard to impose a parcel of 0.46 acres of a greater shopping center that's already a very auto-centric center that's driven mostly by vehicles. And we just ask you to take that in mind. And I would ask a question to staff. I think with the history of rezoning, the city of Boise is not really in favor of spot zoning parcels. Am I correct?
Yeah, I'm not, we'll discuss. Yeah, sure.
I also like to say that, you know, when we bought this property under the zoning, that the process for doing a project like this probably would have been 2-3 months at most. We're going on 9 right now. With the understanding again that we bought this property with a zoning that was very much in line with what we believe we could develop here. And with the new requirements that, again, I get it, we're facing the entire city. Yeah, to do a rezoning here would be very difficult for us.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that. Okay. Let's bring this back before the commission to render a decision. Again, it's our last item, number 5, CUP 24-11. I will entertain a motion. Entertaining a motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
I move that we deny CUP 2411 for the reasons stated in the staff report.
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Torres. Thank you, Commissioner Gillespie. Milt, you wanna kick us
Mr.
off?
Chairman.
Yeah.
I'm sympathetic to the applicant, and from a policy point of view, I think this is a bit of a what's the right word, a paradox that somehow we need to get straightened out either through a rezone or through some other procedure. But as the code stands now, and that's what we have, I'd just like to make a couple of points. One, the proposed development does not comply with the MX3. It just doesn't. And second, I've historically for decades that I've served on this commission, we have not looked at CCNRs as a actionable constraint on the city's code. And so I'm not going to do it now. So what we really have here is just a developer, in my judgment, having a pretty strong case that what the city's requiring is not economically feasible, but nowhere in the code does it sort of encourage us to consider that specific issue as determinative. So I think I think Jesse's right in reading the code and reading the situation, and for that reason, I don't think we can approve it. I do think it's an interesting policy problem that folks ought to think about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's not our job tonight.
Right. Thank you, Milt.
Mr. Chairman.
Tony, please.
I agree with everything that Commissioner Gillespie said. I also would note, while I take into account everything the applicant said about the property and what's possible there, it's pretty clear with the modern zoning code, the city does not want developments like the Fred Meyer Shopping Center in these areas anymore. The whole point is to try to move toward other things in the future. And unfortunately, you're stuck because you're in conflict between the MX3 zoning and the CCNR. But unfortunately, I agree with Commissioner Gillespie. It's not really our purview to enforce that CCNR, and we, I think, have to go by the code in this situation, which is why I will be supporting the motion.
Okay. Thanks, Tony. Any other thoughts?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I think I struggled with this one. I think I'm in support of the motion, but the portion that I struggled with was the alternative form includes a reduction in minimum height of the building, item B on that. The reduced height of the building and any resulting reduction in the size of the building will not result in the underdevelopment of the site or inefficient use of city facilities. And I think the part that I'm struggling with is right now that site and that building is underutilized between the parking and the existing kind of deteriorated structure. It's already underutilized. It's already underdeveloped. It's already inefficient. We have a proposal in front of us that is at least a new use. So this point is so subjective to determining whether it's underutilized or not, when the only things that we have to compare it to are an unused building or a new use. Well, between the two of those, the new use is a utilization of the site. And so that's the part that I'm struggling with. I think that the way that I see it, the city is kind of looking for a few more trade-offs in terms of maybe the width or some more kind of form-based things that might help get closer to that urban feel that maybe aren't there. But I think item B is where I'm really struggling because it's just so subjective, and I think that that's difficult to kind of grapple with.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah. Bill, yeah.
I also think staff is correct in having substantive issues with the use itself, the auto form use in an MX3, in an activity center. Again, the applicant has a good point that that's what this is, but the city's nevertheless has zoned that as MX3 and put an activity center on it which specifically does, prohibit, is, I suppose, one word, new auto-centric uses. So.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, John, please.
Yeah, I agree with everything said, and I want to highlight also for the future, when staff brings this forward to council, is that if we continue to have this problem, the applicant brought up the great point about visibility to these types of, Kroger properties, groceries and things like that. So if we have other activity centers across the city, we're gonna have this exact same problem where there's going to be CCNRs that are going to limit, and so council and staff need to grapple with that. But code's clear that we can't, I agree, we can't pass this.
Yeah, certainly. Okay. All right. Yeah, gentlemen, you guys, I mean, like that last application, right? It's new code. We're grappling with these things, I appreciate your guys' approach to the situation and helping us vet out all the different issues that you're seeing, right? It doesn't make your jobs any easier, and I apologize for the time lag and, all of those pieces that come along with this new code, right? But we're definitely uncovering all these issues as we get into this new code, right? So I know, again, it doesn't make your jobs any easier, but I do appreciate how you approached it. I tend to agree with most of the comments that, I don't see a path forward where we can approve this just based on guidance with the new code and height requirements and where the city's vision is for this activity center. So that's kind of where I'm coming down with it as well. So unless there's any other final thoughts, I'm going to go ahead and call the roll. Okay. All right. Again, we got a motion to deny CUP 24-11 with a motion by Commissioner Gillespie and the second by Commissioner Torres. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schaefer,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Mooney,
Yes.
Seha,
Yes.
Torres,
Yes.
Dome,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay. Well, that concludes our agenda this evening, and we are adjourned.